Renee in Pooler writes, my neighbor's grandson gets a monthly disability check from Social Security, and my neighbor calls it the crazy check because she laughs about it and says that there isn't anything wrong with her grandson that a little discipline wouldn't fix, and it seems that the boy's mom was able to trick the SSA and convince them to make this payment because she can't control her son. Is this common?
She also says,
Yeah.
let me say,
Yeah.
that she's enraged by this. She
Okay.
says, I'm very worried about our Social Security and Medicare future, and I'm pinching pennies everywhere for fear I can't afford my own future needs.
Right.
What can seniors do to stop the abuse of a system that was put in place as a safety net for those with real needs and for seniors in general? Nobody seems to talk about this problem, and it looks to me like these abuses are the one reason we're having such trouble with these systems. I thought that was a really interesting part of her letter.
Indeed.
Well, it certainly is an understandable concern, given that everyone is worried about the fact that the funding for Social Security long-term does not seem to be sufficient to meet the requirements, especially when all the baby boom generation is retired and so on.
Yeah, I've got about a year to go before I can get the full benefit so far.
But I think I can, at least in part, maybe ease some of the listeners' concerns. Number one, it sounds like this is a case for a child on SSI. And SSI, although it's administered by the Social Security Administration, is actually funded by general tax revenues. So these benefits are not a drain on Social Security taxes, and not a drain on the Social Security so-called trust fund.
Right.
So it really doesn't take anything away from what is set aside for retirees or people on Social Security disability. This is funded by general tax revenues. Actually, it's a little confusing because it is administered by the Social Security Administration, but it's a separate program. It was actually set up during the Nixon administration that way to consolidate a bunch of other programs that have been existing for a while on the state and federal level, and thought this was a more efficient way of handling it.
Doesn't sound like that to me.
I was just going to say, does it really make any difference? This sounds like a scam of the system if that's the case, if what Betty is saying is true.
Well, the second point, which perhaps might ease her concerns a little bit, is it sounds like she believes that this child's mother has put something over on the Social Security Administration.
Right.
And while it's certainly important as to what a mother, the custodial parent, says about a child's situation in terms of whether they're eligible for SSI, Social Security Administration is not going to grant those benefits solely on the statement of the mother. They look at all kinds of reports from medical doctors, psychologists, teachers, counselors, other school officials. So it has to be more than just what the mother said in order for this claim to be granted. Now, of course, we're not naive. We know that in an imperfect world, any system that's administered by people, there will be mistakes. There will be claims that will be granted that ought not be, just as there will be claims that should be upheld that are denied, unfortunately.
And as vast as the system is, I mean, it's another one of those things where a government is taking on more than it can chew.
And you can't really judge the entire program by those cases where the wrong result is reached for whatever reason. And of course, that will be inevitable. But I don't think it's unreasonable if a child is found by their doctors, by their teachers, for them to have a little additional help so that the parent can get them additional counseling, get them whatever help they might need to meet those additional expenses. Sometimes an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and if a child can get some help at a critical stage in their development, be it for medical reasons or because they can't learn for whatever reason, or because they can't get along, they have no respect for authority, so their teachers are constantly disciplining them. There's a number of factors that have to be found to be a serious condition.
I have no problem with medical benefits, but what bothers me, and I think what bothers our caller, our writer on the website, is that they get a check. They get a monthly check, and what is that about? I mean, why was the system set up to give people money for a child in that situation? I can see if it's a really disabled child who needs the parent to be home and the parent can't work, something like that. But I've seen a lot of abuse with these crazy checks.
Well, I think that many times a child can benefit if they get some additional treatment, and the parent does have to take time off. They have to drive them somewhere. They have to take them somewhere. There are a lot of additional expenses, and it can be due to a medical condition as well as to some of these developmental and learning problems that we've talked about. And if at the end of, well, this will typically end at age 18, although it could end, if they're still in school, they could end at 22. But typically, in many cases, they find that because they get some additional help, the child may then be able to become a productive member of society, which is what it's all intended to accomplish.
Indeed.